Hey, it's Mike Cambright with FlipNerd.com. Welcome back for another exciting expert interview where I interview successful real estate investing experts and entrepreneurs in our industry to help you learn and grow. As a shameless plug, I've got to tell you that we've totally revamped FlipNerd.com, and now we have a very robust platform in existence for real estate investors to find deals and find vendors and build community and a lot of great things. So go check out the all-new FlipNerd.com. For today's show, I'm joined by Steve Cavanaugh. He's a Maryland-based real estate investor, mentor, and coach. He's the president of the Southern Maryland REI Group, and he's an avid musician. Steve, we haven't talked about that yet. Yeah. Got to hear about your jam sessions that are world famous, I hear. So, Steve's main exit strategy is rehabbing, and unlike many investors, Steve is focused a lot more on quality versus quantity. A lot of us get hung up in the volume game and a lot of chest thumping with how many deals you've done. But Steve may only do 5 or 6 houses a year. He primarily rehabs them and has stayed lean and mean, so he's able to maximize his profit and use that to live the lifestyle that he wants. So it's a refreshing story that we all need to hear every once in a while to kind of question why we work so hard and are we using real estate to live the life that we want, which is why almost all of us got into this game anyway. So Steve has some great lessons to share, and we're going to talk about just that, how to use real estate as a tool to create the lifestyle that makes sense for you and your family. Before we get started, though, with Steve, let's take a moment to recognize our featured sponsors. RealtyMogul.com is an online marketplace for real estate investing, connecting borrowers and capital from accredited and institutional investors. Get a rehab loan fast and close in as little as 10 days. Rates start as low as 9%. We'd also like to thank National Real Estate Insurance Group, the nation's leading provider of insurance to the residential real estate investor market. From individual properties to large-scale investors, National Real Estate Insurance Group is ready to serve you. Please note, the views and opinions expressed by the individuals in this program do not necessarily reflect those of FlipNerd.com or any of its partners, advertisers, or affiliates. Please consult professionals before making any investment or tax decisions, as real estate investing can be risky. Hey, Steve, welcome to the show, my friend.
Hey, Mike, what's happening? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, glad you're here. So it's, every once in a while, it's funny, I was talking about how I was telling you right beforehand that I was just at my mastermind meeting where there's some really high volume folks in there, and not to take anything away from any of them, quite frankly, you're not allowed in the group if you don't do a lot of volume. That's kind of the measure of, how much experience you have or whatever. And it's kind of an interesting dynamic because we all got in this game, whether you do a lot of volume or a little bit, everybody pretty much got in this game with the hope of it creating, financial freedom and lifestyle freedom, which is ultimately at some point you start to realize they go hand in hand, but freedom of time is every bit as valuable, if not more than financial freedom, right?
Absolutely, 100%.
Yeah. So it's always great to hear these stories because a lot of people that end up doing a lot of volume, what ends up happening is they have these huge burdens of just the overhead and the expense, and it's this vicious cycle of this monster that you have to continually feed, and next thing you know, you might be doing a ton of volume, but it takes a lot of risk and a lot of treasure to get to that point.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah. So I'm excited to talk about this because I think it's something that everybody needs to hear. It's not, ultimately you can't put units in the bank, and that doesn't really matter.
Right. That's so true.
Yeah. Hey, before we kind of dive into talking about that and getting your perspective on everything, tell us about you, kind of how you got started as a real estate investor, and maybe sprinkle in some of your jam session stuff.
Sure. Well, all right. So my story goes like this. I graduated college in 1999. I was a communication arts major, music minor, jazz guitar performance, and pretty much had no idea what I wanted to do with my life like most people out there. So I was fortunate in that I knew some people, was able to get me a job right out of college in the IT industry. Had nothing to do with what I went to school for, but I knew it was a paycheck, and I knew I could go out and buy a new car as soon as I got out of college, so I was excited to do it. Well, I did the 9 to 5, which was actually more like 9 to 6 or 7, for 5 days a week for 4 years. And absolutely hated it, just hated every bit of it, how this is going. And, sitting in meetings where your superiors just listen to themselves talk and just irate customers and all this stuff. I was at that point in time. I started and ran the support desk for our software that we were supporting, and it was rough. So I hated it, and I was commuting 1 hour each way. So and I just kind of came to a realization one day: I'm spending half my life on the road, and I just hated it. So. Yeah. One of the things that's great about IT is that there usually is a little bit of downtime in between customers screaming at you. So I hopped on the internet. One of the websites that I came across was flippinghomes.com. And that's where I came to know Steve Cook. And I learned about his boot camps that he used to run back in the day in Baltimore. And so Baltimore's just right up the road from me. It's about an hour and 10 minutes from where I'm sitting right now. And I said, well, I can go ahead and go up there. And, at the time, I think he was selling his boot camps, I want to say, for $1,300. Of course, I was living paycheck to paycheck in a job, and it was $1,300 more than I had at the time. But, one way or another, I came upon the $1,300 and I made the investment. I went to that boot camp and learned what I needed to learn. I came home. I immediately applied it. And a few months down the road, I did a wholesale deal where I flipped 2 lots to a local builder. I made over $100,000 on that first wholesale deal. And I took that as a sign that this is what I needed to do. So I immediately, then right after, I went back to Steve's boot camp again the next year. I plowed that profit from that into my first rehab deal, and I made $62,000 on that first rehab deal. And I said, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to be able to leave my job as a result of doing this. So after 4 years of working the job and after getting the real estate stuff up and running, that's exactly what I did.
So tell me again, you worked at that job for 4 years, and how long into it did you do those first couple deals?
It was probably about halfway through.
Okay, so you stuck it out. You stuck it out for a couple more years.
I did. Yeah. And one of the things that was great, we all have things going for us or going against us at any given time. One of the things I had going for me at that point in time was my wife and I got married, so we were able to, and she had a regular job. She was teaching in a school. So we were able to live very cheaply under her salary as I kind of made the transition from, full-time working for somebody else to full-time real estate investor. So that was one of the things I had going for me, because I had a wife who worked.
Yeah, no, that's great. It's great when you can live on one income, or if you get into this wasn't true for me, and it's not true for a lot of people either, but when you get in early enough to where you maybe don't have kids yet and don't have a lot of financial responsibilities yet, and it just kind of gets harder and harder to make those leaps as time goes by and you get more debt and more responsibility and all those things. So
sure.
Yeah. So then along the line, I know you run a RIA group now. You have a coaching club. So kind of talk about over time how that's evolved.
Sure. So the RIA group started up back in like 2002, which was around the time I just started learning about all this stuff. And at that point in time, another gentleman was running it, and he also worked. He was also in the Navy, and he got stationed overseas somewhere. So essentially, he said, "Steve, do you want to take this thing and run with it?" And I wasn't up and running enough in the business at that point in time to really know what I was doing. But what I did was I kept everybody's email addresses. So when it came time for me to actually give the thing a push again and start it back up, which I did in 2006, I had all the info. I blasted out, said, "Hey guys, we're going to meet here now, and we're going to do it." And I'm proud to say now, I mean, it's quite a great group that we have going in Southern Maryland. It's the Southern Maryland Real Estate Investors Group. It's the Southern Maryland's only RIA.
Yeah.
And we have a membership of over 1,000, and a typical meeting is anywhere from 60 to 80 people.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about, I think a lot of real estate investors, a lot of entrepreneurs, you get into, once you make the leap and decide to start a business, then for a lot of people, it becomes a volume game. It's always, how do I do more? How do I become bigger? How do I take on more and more and more? And they just never satisfied with enough. Mm-hmm. And that certainly could wreak havoc on your life and your family and stuff like that, because your job or your business becomes your mistress that you just sure. You can never get away from. And to be frank, I find myself in that situation all the time, and I know a lot of real estate investors do. So talk about how you had the foresight to know, or how you got to that point to where that I'm okay just doing this and staying lean and mean, and not trying to take over the world all the time.
Sure. Well, let me give you my upfront disclaimer before I go into this. I'm not perfect, and as you say, it's very easy to fall into the trap of going back there.
Yeah.
And it's very easy to just heap another thing on, and then next thing you know, you're just drowning in your own success.
Right.
And it happens, you know.
Yep.
But back to your question, I think the place to start is having a vision. You have to know what you want your life to look like. Forget about money. Forget about yachts and palm trees and all that stuff. Just say, what do you want your life to look like on a daily basis? What type of interactions do you want to have with your wife, with your children, with your family, with your friends? You need to go just start very simple. You know, keep it very simple here and just write down on a piece of paper, what do you want your life to look like? Mm-hmm. And then the key is, this is big, you build a business to serve that life. So the life is in the middle and then the business is around it. So many of us do this the opposite way. We say, how can we make the most money? How can we work the hardest? How can we have like the biggest ego? You know, how can we have the biggest business out there? And then what they try to do is then they try to build a life around the business and fit it in any nooks and crannies that may exist. And what happens is the life usually ends up falling apart and the business goes along with it. So I feel like I'm preaching. I'm not.
No, hey, these are great lessons. To be honest, I think that we have a lot of people that listen to the show every day, thousands of people, which is fantastic. But let me tell you the two, probably if people are listening to this right now, the two most common people are either people that want to get into real estate investing because they see it as a vehicle for a better life. Mm-hmm. So that's an important part of hearing this message. The other type of person that listens to this show is a high-performing person already, like you and a lot of the guests I've had on the show that continue to listen afterwards, that this will resonate as well, because a lot of people fall into the trap of, you know, how do I take it to another level? How do I take it to another level? And you start to lose track of why you're working so hard or why you started your business in the first place. So preach away, my friend.
Yeah. You know, like I said, I'm not an expert on it, but it has served me very well. Just keeping things simple, doing very profitable deals, outsourcing, you know, a lot of it. And just staying focused on that vision, what you want to do.
Yeah, yeah. You know, people have heard me say this before. I think real estate investors specifically, like let's just say in your business where you say you do around 5 or 6 deals a year, maybe rehabs. Mm-hmm. Well, there's a big difference between 5 and 6, right? I mean, and I know just based on your geography, they're higher profit deals. So, but you know, one deal could be 20% of your annual income for your family potentially. So I think what a lot of real estate investors get themselves in a situation is this feast or famine situation, to where they're always fearful of the famine. Therefore, they try to feast as much as they can.
Sure.
Yeah.
I think that's common for most entrepreneurs, really. I think it's something that's innate in most entrepreneurs.
Yeah. Yeah. So talk about how you get comfortable with the fact of, you know, let's just say doing 5 or 6 deals a year and not saying, well, I'm going to shoot for 8 or 10 just to provide some cushion for myself. And then, then it starts this cycle of, well, maybe I really need to do 12. And, you know, how do you get to a point to where in your mind, you're just like, this is enough. And I can pull back right now.
You know, that's a really good question. I don't know that you ever truly get comfortable with that. I think it's like somebody who just starts out saying, you know, if I could only get to where I have $5,000 in a saving account, and then it's $10,000, and then it's $100,000, and then I can't wait until my net worth becomes $1 million, and then it's $2 million, you know, and then it's $10 million. I don't know that there's ever really a comfort level with that. You know, how do I deal with it? I mean, first of all, I set up that vision and say, am I accomplishing these things, business and money aside? Am I accomplishing these things that I want? Do I have the relationship with my wife? Do I have a relationship with my children that I'm looking for? You know, is the business getting in the way of that or not? You know, how can the business better serve my life and not the other way around? And I think that's the way to do it. Now, if you're asking me how do you stay relaxed in the midst of all this, something else that I like to do, you know, I do yoga, I work out 3 to 5 times a week. You know, and I try to meditate whenever possible. So just to really relax and just really breathe in life, you know, I think it's very important. And I think it's often overlooked by many high performers in our culture today.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Talk a little about your exit strategy. So, one of the ways that you're able to do less volume is to kind of squeeze more out of the fruit that you do get, which is through rehabbing. And so, part of the problem with a lot of people that do a high volume is it's hard to be a really high volume rehabber. You kind of have to wholesale a lot or assign a lot of deals and take yourself out of the mix where there's less risk, because with rehabbing, you and I both know as a professional rehabber, you don't think there's probably a whole lot of risk in your business. But that's because you're probably more hands-on. You couldn't do high volume rehabbing and like never visit the properties, never approve the deals, because somebody's gonna eat your lunch once in a while, which is gonna bring you down. So the way you've been able to do it is just by not having a lot of people in your office. I think you said you had one assistant. It's kind of staying lean and mean.
Yep.
Talk about how the kind of role that staying lean and kind of squeezing more fruit out of the juice allows you to do the type of volume that you do and still live a great life.
Sure, that's a great question. How long do you have today? there's a lot of different ways.
3 hours. It's a 3-hour show today, everybody. Just kidding.
The primary way is I have never ever deviated from the formula. I use the 70% formula. ARV times 0.70 minus repairs equals offer, and I use real ARVs, not fake ones or not imagined ones or inflated ones. I use real repairs, usually down to within $1,000. So I'm not just kind of ballparking. I'm really trying to narrow in on exactly what it is. And I use contractors that I've worked with for many years, who essentially can run the jobs without me. They know what I want from job to job, all the way down to the colors of paint on the walls and everything else. So, and the other thing is I really, really, really know my geographical area. I know my neighborhoods. And if I get a call or if I look at a property, I can analyze it usually in a minute. I know if it's a deal or not.
Yeah. And talk about, so I know the answer to this, but why do you do any wholesaling at all?
I do some wholesaling. Right now I've got a large coaching group, and I work with folks and walk them through their first 3 deals. So a lot of times what I'll do is I'll wholesale to my students. Because we participate in a JV fashion on those 3 deals. I don't juice the front end of those deals, but I will usually mark them up a little bit to cover my time for the marketing effort and putting the deal together. Okay.
And so talk a little bit about how because you've been doing this long enough to where you've seen a few market cycles. So how you kind of manage risk as markets shift.
Well, again, I'll go back to the formula. When everything was kind of ramping up, you could kind of just buy anything and put it on the market. I'm sure you know that.
Yeah.
It was pretty easy to do that. But then when everything started crashing, I remember back in 2008, was it the fall of 2008 when the stock market kind of melted down? I remember watching CNBC and thinking, man, gosh, everybody's kind of crying blood in the streets. What are we going to do here? I saw it as tremendous opportunity. And around here, we just had a lot of foreclosures, and we were pretty big. We weren't Miami or anything, but it was pretty bad around here. So.
Yeah.
Really what I did is I actually took a few months off, and I sat back and I just kind of watched everything, and then I picked my entry point again. And I knew that if I could buy a house and then rehab it and put it on the market retail, priced where all the short sales and the foreclosure were priced, that if any buyers were going out, they would look at basically every 3 houses was a rehab, short sale, or a foreclosure. Mm-hmm. They're all priced the same. Well, which one do you think they're going to pick? They're spending half their day, in a realtor going through these cold, wet, nasty, moldy houses, and then they come at the end of the day into my beautiful staged rehab. Which one are they going to pick? So that's how I stayed ahead of things when everything was kind of crashing. But I was always making sure that I was using accurate ARVs, being nimble, getting in and out of deals as quickly as possible helps to mitigate that risk as well. So
yeah, that's awesome. So talk about your kind of structure of your team and how much effort you put into watching the rehabs, actually going out to meet with sellers if you're buying direct from sellers, some of those things to where a lot of people I've had on the show, a lot of other real estate investors, there's always a couple different paths. One is the hands-on approach where you have your hand in everything and that's my guess is that's how you stay lean and mean. Mm-hmm. The other side is try to outsource everything, where there's virtual people doing everything, call centers taking calls, all that stuff, which adds more effort, but it allows them potentially more freedom, and there's a lot of, drama that can come with all that as well. But maybe just talk about kind of a day in the life or a week in the life of your role in each part of, from generating leads to working those leads to, buying, selling, and rehabbing, all those things, kind of how much you're involved.
Sure. So on the marketing and acquisition side of things, I do all of the talking, negotiating, meeting with sellers, any of that sort of thing.
Okay.
My assistant's full-time. She pretty much runs my office. So she pays the bills and, does all the invoicing and all that stuff. And she helps put the marketing out there and all that good stuff. So we have a number of different ways that we acquire deals. But as far as, like I say, in negotiating, meeting with sellers stuff, that comes down to me. I like to take down the deal when it comes time. As far as rehabbing, I work with a general contractor who I've worked with since 2007. And really, once I just started ramping up the business, and I've just been very fortunate to work with the same guy for this long.
Yeah.
And he does about 80% of my rehabs. And then the other 20% we sub out. So we sub out HVAC, we sub out carpeting, roofing, stuff like that.
Okay.
And the good thing is that he knows all these subs. And I don't necessarily go through him for them, but we work in a triangular fashion.
Right.
It's done. So he can kind of keep an eye on the jobs for me. There's many weeks that go by where I don't actually visit the job site. I just talk to the contractor usually once a week, and he can kind of keep me up to date on where we're at with the job. And we just have that trust level right now. He's also very credit worthy, which I'm sure, as you know, it's hard to find credit worthy contractors a lot of the time.
Yeah.
So he can float me in between draws and all that stuff. So it works out very well on the financial end of things as well. So it's pretty cool. Having that team member is huge for me. He most definitely is my ace and one of the cornerstones of my business. And then on the realtor side of things, I actually am not a licensed agent. I use licensed agents. We have 4 realtors on my team that handle acquisition and then sales side of thing. So whenever we want to go make offers on MLS properties, we just put them on an email, hit send, and it's taken care of. I don't fool with any paperwork or anything like that. And then they go ahead and then take care of listing it. My assistant actually goes out and takes the pictures for us. We've got real high-end camera equipment. We take very nice pictures of our homes. I believe that is so key these days to selling property on the MLS. And then the brokers handle the rest of it.
Okay. And in terms of monitoring a rehab, do you go out to the house and walk through with your contractor and say, here's what we're going to do? And do you do like a final walkthrough, or are you totally hands off at this point?
Sure. So when we acquire the property, yes, I do go walk through with the contractor, and we develop a scope of work right there at the beginning, and we write it all down. I hand that to my assistant. She puts it in Excel. We send it over to him. He prices out the line items, and then that's what we work off of. And then we get the subs to price everything off of, and then that's what we work off of. And then, of course, usually throughout the course of the rehab, anytime there's an issue, I'll get a call on that and say, okay, Steve, how do you want to proceed? Most of the time, I'll just follow his recommendation. Again, we have a trust level. I know he's not juicing me on stupid stuff. There's really only an issue if there's absolutely an issue. And then, towards the end of it, I do like to come through at the end, do a punch list, just make sure everything looks good. And I'm always thinking, what's the buyer going to think when the buyer walks into this house, and just trying to make that first time that the buyer walks in the house just so spectacular that they're just overcome emotionally. All rationale goes out the window, and they're ready to pay full list price for the property.
Yeah, that's awesome. My model is very similar. I have a contractor that's probably rehabbed, I don't even know, 150 houses for me that, I trust his judgment. I walk through at the beginning for a half hour and tell him, here's what we want to do. And the only thing we really talk about is the stuff that's unique to that property. Otherwise, everything's the same paint we've used on the last 200 houses. And generally, we always decide, do you want satin nickel or oil rub bronze? Yep. A couple of decisions like that. And that's an easier decision these days because ORB is really not that much more expensive than satin nickel. So it's like, let's just do ORB here.
Yep.
Are we going to use ceramic tile or travertine or some sort of, flooring if it's a little bit higher dollar house? Other than that, pretty much everything's the same as every other, property that we've done recently. And so it's usually a pretty quick conversation. And it's a great place to be where you get to that point to where you have some people like that on your team that, have your back, and you can trust implicitly to just make decisions unless you want to tear down a wall or you've got some major issue that we need to discuss. Just use your best judgment and go.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, talk a little bit about, we've got just maybe 5 more minutes or so. Talk about, you know, so I know you mentor folks. I know you're a life and air. Talk a little bit about how you kind of give some advice to people that are listening here on how they can use real estate to kind of build the lifestyle that they want. Some of the just kind of general advice that you share with people.
Well, probably one of the first things I would say is do the vision, aside from the business, then plug the business into the vision. I already said that a couple times. Beyond that, I believe conventional theory is bird dog, then wholesale, then rehab, then buy rentals, then move into commercial property. That's kind of conventional. That's what everybody tends to think. I think of it like this. I think the first thing everybody should do is learn how to rehab, because a rehabber needs to know how to buy below market, which is also what a wholesaler knows how to do, how to look for properties. A rehabber needs to know how to look for properties. A wholesaler and bird dogs need to know that. If you own rental property, you're going to need to know how to fix that rental property up, so you can learn who the contractors you use are. You can learn what the prices to pay those contractors are through rehabbing. So I actually think that getting into a program, linking up with a mentor that knows rehabbing is your key to learning all real estate investing, because everything starts and ends with these homes that we build. Beyond that, I think I look back on my college degree and my communication skills and all that stuff at the time. Communications majors, we were kind of like, joked about. It was like, we didn't really learn anything, but we knew how to party, kind of thing. Well, I think that I think that aside from the house, I think that communication skills are huge, because when it comes right down to it, real estate is a people business. It's all about the people.
Yep.
So I think whatever you can do to develop and enhance your communication skills, your people skills, will only serve you in this business.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's interesting about the rehabbing part, because I agree with you. A lot of people say, well, I'm on a bunch of wholesalers lists, but we're never able to make the deals work because their numbers, they're lying, or their numbers are bullshit, or whatever they might say. But the reality is I think that much more often than somebody being dishonest is they just don't know because they haven't rehabbed.
Right.
They just assume, well, somebody told them somewhere that you can rehab any house for $10 a square foot. It's like, well, no, I mean, what if you got foundation issues? What if you got old electrical that's outdated? Or there's just a lot of these kind of rule of thumbs are really loose at best. Yeah. So I think that's more of the issue. So I agree with you. That's awesome.
Rehabbing is a fundamental skill, and I believe that if you're going to be in real estate for the long haul, you should learn it.
Yeah, and I would say even for the wholesalers that are out there that are hearing this, if this resonates with you, my intention wasn't to call you out; it was to go get some better education. But one thing to think about is when you sell a house to somebody and they're going to rehab it, ask them if you can watch them rehab it, and just try to get the education on what they did and how much it ended up costing. You made some estimates on that house, but what did they actually spend on it? And try to learn that way. It'll help you kind of sharpen your sword. I'm trying to use some analogies here but it'll effectively make you a better wholesaler.
That's a great suggestion.
Yeah, awesome, Steve. Well, if people want to learn more about you, your club, wait, we haven't talked about your jam sessions yet. So tell us about your jam sessions, these famous jam sessions.
Sure. So I don't know what all you've heard, but basically what I did.
I've heard it all, man. Now
you've heard it all.
No, I haven't.
Tell me what you know.
No, I don't know a lot other than you.
Okay. A few years ago, I guess maybe 4 years ago now, I hired a film crew to follow me around and some other musicians and film this curriculum that I developed many years ago called The Art of Jamming. And what it does is I'm a lifelong musician. I've played music my entire life. I created this curriculum. It's Art of Jamming. It's how to improvise with one another. So if you and I are both musicians, there are techniques that we can learn to sit down, go over, that will develop and facilitate the ability for us to essentially communicate through the music. And a lot of people don't necessarily think of music that way. They think of it as like a set of chords that you play and then you sing the lyrics. But I'm not necessarily talking about singer-songwriter stuff here. I'm talking about the nuances of improvisation, especially in the jazz idiom and like the jam band genre. You see a lot of this where there's a lot of interaction between the musicians and communication through the music. And when you can get to that point, music's a whole lot of fun.
Yeah.
So what I did is I said, there are these concepts that are easily learned once you know what they are and put together. So I hired this film crew. I did a lecture for 2 days in the classroom. They filmed the whole thing. And then I took this band out on the road and we played a number of gigs and we did interviews with the band guys and essentially illustrating the concepts all the way through. It came together in a 45-minute film that is available at artofjamming.com.
That's awesome. That's cool, man. So tell us some other websites. How do other folks find out about you and your club? And
Sure. The Southern Maryland Real Estate Investors Group, which meets once a month down here in Southern Maryland, if anybody's anywhere close, and we have folks from Baltimore, D.C., all over the state of Maryland come down. Okay. We meet the third Tuesday every month, and you can go to our website at SOMD, as in Southern Maryland, SOMD REIG, Southern Maryland Real Estate Investors Group.com.
Okay. Awesome. Any other? Where else can they find you?
Yeah, snowbirdflipper.com.
Snowbird Flipper.
So it's been part of my life in AirVision now for a couple of years to get my business to the point where I would be able to be a snowbird. And I hate the cold. And people say, well, Steve, it doesn't really get that cold in Southern Maryland. Well, I'll tell them, yes, it does. We have 4 full seasons here. And it's cold in the winter, let me tell you. And I don't like it when it's below 50. I like to be warm. I always say the hotter the better. People start crying foul when it's 90 and 100 degrees. I say bring it on. So I'm here in the heat and humidity of Southern Maryland during the summer too, let me tell you. But my family loves Southeast Florida in the West Palm Beach area. And we've been going down there for about 12 years now. And this will be the first winter that we spend down there. We usually go down there 3 or 4 times a year, but we're going to actually spend 4 months, January through April of 2016. And I'm documenting the whole process for folks. If you go to snowbirdflipper.com, I've got an ebook on there that I'll give to you. It is how to work a 10-hour work week, and it's got some of my rehabbing secrets in there.
Awesome. We'll add those links down below the video here. Cool. Steve, thanks so much for your time today. Great to see you, and appreciate you sharing your message, because I think a lot of real estate, hopefully this resonates with a lot of people. Even, I like to, even though as busy as I am, I love hearing these stories, because you start to question, does busyness equal happiness?
Right.
And I think it's a good, whether you agree with anything you heard today or not, I think you've got to hear these stories every once in a while to question if you're kind of like you said, what your vision is. Why are you working so hard? And if you're not working hard, then congratulations and thanks for joining us today. But anyway, Steve, thanks for joining us, my friend.
No problem, Mike.
Please stay in touch.
Yeah, man, no problem.
All righty, bye bye.
Thank you.
Are you a member of FlipNerd.com, the most robust real estate investing platform in existence, where you can find off-market wholesale deals and great vendors literally in your market? You can get access to advice from experts and learn about local clubs and events right in your backyard. If not, please visit FlipNerd.com and register for a free account. You can register in less than a minute. It's pretty much the coolest site that's ever existed in the real estate investing industry, so get on over to FlipNerd.com.